I'm here to talk to you about how our research project looks at the way drawing is used during the creative process of scenography within the performance arts. It is organized online as a blog and as a public digital database. It is our intention to reflect upon the artistic and pragmatic relationship we scenographers have with drawing as a device for the creation of space and time of performance, and also as a mediator between the bodies of actors on stage and our drawing pages. Our hypothesis is that there is a particular relationship between the gesture of the scenographer and those of the performer generating space on stage. We've interviewed over 15 Portuguese costume designers, and a few of them spoke to us about how they slowly stopped drawing during rehearsal. They describe drawing as a tool for reflection, critical thinking, and the development of memories of rehearsals, but they very soon left those behind once they were faced with the specifics of the actors' bodies. All these designers follow rehearsals quite closely, and they all schedule early fittings as opportunities to sculpt on and with the performers. It seems to them that they carry on drawing, but on the body and in space, and what's more important, in time. Even if we understand this as sculpting, they refer to it in the interviews as drawing with materials, fabrics, whichever materials they are using for a specific show. Since they have all worked with these performers for a number of years, they belong or work with theatre companies that are stable and have existed for over 20 years. They have intimate knowledge of the performers' bodies, so that they look for in these fitting sessions is the character's gestuality for a specific show. The designers use their own embodied knowledge of past rehearsals to add to the performers, to create a connection between body and materials that is able to develop during the time and space of performance. A collaboration between body and material that we can call a flux of meaning. They explore possibilities of enlarging or restricting action, changing movement and bodily shape through scenographic material. They search for a way to pass on what they've learned through drawing, that is, drawing in rehearsal and in research, for the purpose of creating a scenographic skin, something that can be worn, but it is also part of the scenography and can generate a new sense of presence. This is neither pure character nor body, but both. In this paper, I'll discuss examples from this research project and from my own practice, where costume sculpted in rehearsal came to have spatial temporal qualities, generating a specific presence on stage and consequently molding the performance. The first example I'm going to tell you about is Clara Bento. She is the resident costume designer at Teatro Bando in Palmela. She has designed the theatre company's costumes for over 30 years and worked with all its resident actors as well as with any newcomers. She comes from a sculpting background and has taught visual arts at a local high school for most of her life. Her work is grounded in the dialogue between drawing and building, as she not only designs but manufactures most costumes or its prototypes. Her intimate knowledge of techniques for making clothes, props, or accessories comes from the company's long tradition in involving all its people with the building of the plastic and visual components of performance. Actors included help build the costume and set. Design and making go hand in hand as the creative process progresses, reacting to rehearsals and the evolution of the mise-en-scène. She understands costume as complementary to the actor's body and to the making of a character, but she also sees it as an opportunity to explore shape, texture, and color. And there's a side to her work that goes beyond our immediate understanding of what we are seeing. She looks forward to a place where the character will be years from the moment of performance and back to where the character came from. She works not only for the moments the character is on stage when the audience is watching, but she also builds a history for that character, and the costume translates that process. Her costumes extend past the time and place of performance, reaching for a wider context, which is given by the costume's heavily layered meaning, often distressed or romantic work, and its very, very detailed accessories. Her workshop, right next to the rehearsal room, is taken over by experiments designed to understand and create an altered universe, that of the story being told on stage. Drawing is mostly an aid to this process, and even if she often produces formal costume designs and she is a master drawer, she uses them as a basis for discussion with the remainder of the creative team. Her work moves very quickly from these first sketches to the workshop. She uses drawings as an aid to memory of rehearsals, as critical thinking, reasoning on what she sees in rehearsal, depending on materials she is using, such as metal, cotton, wool, plants, all are fair game. If she can build it, she won't draw it. Drawing becomes a kind of notation once she feels the need to respond to a specific and immediate necessity for a costume. Nevertheless, she admits drawing should be an important aspect of the designer's process, and she regrets not using drawing as much as she thinks she should. So the question remains if she has stopped drawing out of lack of available time or because it has become irrelevant to the work at hand. And her answer was, probably because I'm a sculptor and I have an urgent need to work with my hands. There are things I cannot understand through drawing. I just build. For me, it has to do with volume, to put into a volume what I've learned from the first sketches. And the three-dimensionality is essential to the work and responds to a specific material that she understands is crucial to the specific show. So she uses drawings as a way of evoking a memory of the weight, shape, and gestures of the actors that work with her. She knows them very well by now, and that memory of their bodies in motion helps her establish the boundaries of the sculpting process. Most often, she does not even fit them until she absolutely needs them to try it on. So we are talking about knowing a performative body through memory and creating a costume through that memory. The second example is a little different. Claudia Ribeiro is a costume designer who works for multiple theatre companies. She makes most of her design decisions while doing fittings. Even though she makes quite a few sketches, she does graphic notebooks. Her sketches are simple, direct, and point towards shape and cut. She tends to draw character, not including any specifics of the performer's body, and makes most of her decisions on sight. So she will know the actor's body through the fitting, and she will try to reach a compromise between what her character was in the drawing and what the actors are exploring gesture-wise and movement-wise. She will use her interpretation of what has been learned from rehearsal to create a character. And between her own memories and her embodied knowledge of the character and the actors. That's quite interesting because, be it volume or movement, she doesn't really know what she'll end up with when she comes to the first fitting. She just has the intuitive sense for it, and fittings with her can last up to 4 hours. Usually they are part of the design schedule, and most of the team will be there, including the director. They will make decisions together. And as she says, such as performers like to have the puppets with them to understand movement and what it produces on stage, I do the same. In a fitting, we can create a bond between them, performers and materials, making a costume that serves their work. It is not only modeling the fabrics to a body, to extend or restrict it, but being there with the performers, sharing this search for a solution. They won't follow any drawings and they won't delay decisions, which means that quite a few of the decisions for the costumes in fittings are later tried on in rehearsals. So we can say that her proposals will change the mise-en-scène and the choreography. It is important to understand that most of her design work is for theatre companies that work with puppets and marionettes, and the actor as a puppet or as a marionette. And that means that she will work with any scale of body that they can come up with all kinds of range of movement. And she truly applies what she has learned from working with these projects onto the human body. She will try to translate the movement of a puppet into a human body through the costume design. A final example is from my own practice, and it is about a show called Caravana. It's about a group of actors at a crossroads trying to decide which way to go, and we've organized the actors into doubles so that one would manipulate the other as you would with a marionette. This means the design was more about building a juxtaposition between a built body and the performer than about making a costume. It was almost like building a marionette that could be worn by one of the actors, who was then manipulated by the other. That process was interesting because costumes could be interchanged between performers during the show. And this meant that I was not designing for specific bodies, but that I was designing the bodies themselves, their shape, their weight, their hinges and range of movement, anything that could be used to produce character. So differently from Clara, who tends to build out from a well-known body, or Claudia, who looks for a symbiosis between the gestures of her costume and her performers. In this show, I looked for a costume that was independent from a specific body, that any performer could bring to life. It was worn as you would wear someone else's body. Even though I usually use drawing throughout my design process, I did not draw even a sketch before I start building. I installed a workshop next to the stage and had the performers try them out as I progressed in the sewing. It was not until almost a year later that I was asked to draw them for an exhibition. Drawing them did not even occur to me. Even if we were working with almost no budget, looking back, I can recall that more than the materials used, the fundamental was finding the connections, the hinges between pieces of fabrics. Finding the movement and the gesture meant finding the proper location for joints and making them seem the most efficient. So these are some of the examples that were being discussed in our research project. So to finish up, I would like to add that for me, a conclusion that we can draw from these interviews is that these designers move from drawing to sculpting as they would move from a fitting to performance, always in flux. It is very difficult to pinpoint a single specific meaning to a costume, but we are always trying to do it. We are always trying to reach a still, a fixed image, always trying to achieve some sort of coherence in the costume that would work in meaningful harmony with the movement of an actor's body and with other scenographic components of performance. Each moment of the design process is a moment when we try that these still images, image by image, shape by shape, make a single costume. A costume made of multiple moments. And drawing is not that different. When we're drawing, we're trying to move a line, searching for a specific shape, a perfect shape. But it is the multiplicity of lines and layers of lines that form that shape, that give it meaning. So as we are using the process of drawing on the page, or sculpting during a fitting, or in rehearsal, trying to piece everything together in our minds, we are always in a process of drawing, of adding up, in flow, and responding to everything that is happening in the collaboration. Thank you. I hope you have appreciated this, and I hope we can meet sometime.